as a policy maker, as a lawmaker, as a political person who wants to shape society based on the values that we come to politics for. Let me frame this whole concept of growth and sustainability as kind of having a tension with each other. Now, I'm a fairly kind of numbers nerd kind of guy, so I throw out a lot of numbers and a lot of basic principles. You can look them up on the internet. But the basic principle is that as the population of the world increases, as the wealth is extracted in terms of ore or production, as wealth is created, one number keeps increasing steadily, and that is the adjusted for inflation, or what we call real, per capita, per person, wealth in the world keeps on increasing. That you take, of course, there are recessions and growth periods, but if you take any 5-year period in the history of mankind, barring things like the plague or meteors hitting the earth, that statistic is always increasing. So the question comes, if the overall wealth of the world is continuously increasing, how is it that so many people are left without clean air, without a trash-free or garbage-free environment, without good water to drink, without good hygiene, and in fact, in many cases, without basic nutrition? And I think the fundamental concept of this conference, when you talk about sustainability and Industry 4.0, you should really go back all the way to Industry 1.0 and say that this tension between growth and equality, almost always rapid growth and any growth will lead to an increase in inequality, will lead to a reduction in inequality unless you have government programs, regulatory models, and systematic efforts to offset this. Let me step back a little and go, let's say, to the founding of the field of economics. Most people would say the first real economist was Adam Smith, who took the philosophy of human wants, needs, desires, work, and converted it to the field that we now know as economics. Now, Adam Smith had a very clear, what we would call today, conservative view of economics or policy or government's role. He said the market is efficient in itself. The concept was laissez-faire, let them be. Each man acting in his own interest without any kind of overt regulation, rule, control, or what he called the invisible hand, leads to the best outcome for all humanity. That is conservative economics in one sentence. But conservative economics did in fact lead to growth. Nobody can argue that. The notion of division of labor, the notion of specialization, really the first industrial revolution, mechanization, the advent of steam, the advent of machines that could be driven by power, hydraulic steam, led to a rapid increase in the world's wealth. Huge increase in the world's wealth. But it also led to rapid increases in inequality. In fact, so much so that somebody like Karl Marx observed this divergence and said the returns to capital, the industrialists, the owners, are going to be so high and the workers are going to be so powerless and end up getting smaller and smaller pieces of the pie, and automation will make many of them laid off, that you will have blood on the streets revolution. You will have social strife and capitalism will fail, because you will have a social revolution or actual workers of the world will revolt. Now, in theory, democracy is supposed to take care of this. Why do governments exist? Our job is to make sure that society stays together. It doesn't drift apart. In many ways, communally, caste-wise, but most of all economically. Our job is to make sure that we raise finances or raise money to the government from those who can afford to pay and use that money to do 3 or 4 basic things. Build public goods and services, drinking water, roads, lights, so that everybody's quality of life goes up. We are supposed to create an environment for growth. We set up a system of calm, police, safety, land rights, titles, licenses that allows people to come and create wealth through factories, services, businesses, and so forth. And we are supposed to provide a safety net for those who will fail. Nobody will go through life without failing at some point. Some will fail so badly that they will need state assistance, whether it's unemployment assistance, cheap food, free healthcare, whatever it is. So in theory, Karl Marx's dire predictions are offset if you have a democratically elected government, because the people are sophisticated enough to know what is a sustainable model where I don't end up having to breathe foul air because the rich man lives in a big tower with air purifier. But in practice, we find every time there is a big innovation, Industrial Revolution 1.0, Industrial Revolution 2.0, electricity, transportation, another huge surge in wealth, another huge surge in inequality. Industrial Revolution 3.0, going back 20, 30 years, where we first got personal computing, online data analysis, before the internet I'm talking about. Again, globalization, efficiencies in manufacturing, supply chain management, all the things that came with it led to a huge increase in wealth, but also to a huge increase in inequality, and therefore were unsustainable. Anytime you have rapid increases in inequality, you are against sustainability, not just sustainability in terms of environmental conditions, but sustainability in terms of social construct. Why should people who are continuously being pushed down their quality of life or not participating in growth, why should they buy into a system and stay calm and peaceful and keep on going to vote? It doesn't make sense. People work in their own interest, people vote in their own interest. So if you look at it, anybody who's done any kind of economic textbook study, we can show mathematically that all these innovations increase overall wealth, overall production. In fact, globalization, the removal of trade barriers, we can show mathematically, must increase overall production in the world. What we cannot tell, like we could not tell in Industrial Revolution 1 or 2 or 3, what we cannot tell at all is who gets the benefit of this increase. And we can almost certainly tell that it will not be spread evenly. Not everybody will participate equally in this upside. So by definition, we know that some people will benefit disproportionately and others will find themselves at the bottom end of that pile. So throughout the philosophy of kind of democracy, politics, economics, we try to come up with ways. We try to come up with ways that will mitigate this otherwise kind of progression. The natural progression of the world is to lead to greater entropy, greater disorder, and greater inequality. All things left equal. If government didn't play a role, if regulators didn't play a role, you would find that the wealth gap spread. The rich would get richer. They would figure out, as Rajan, a former RBI governor, once wrote in his book, Saving Capitalism from the Capitalists. He says, the very capitalists who figure out how to win, then go and kind of decay the democratic system, use lobbyists, use money, use whatever, to change the rules to make sure that their position is protected and the next competitor cannot come. So unless you have some active intervention, you will find that this spread of inequality increases and you will have, therefore, a reduction in sustainability. These models are not sustainable. Now, I just say a few things before we go to the questions. We have many tools that we use to tackle this. I'm an ex-banker, so we watch what the Federal Reserve or the RBI does. You know, the central banks can use monetary policy as a way of kind of ensuring that the market doesn't get overheated or that the crashes are not too painful, and of making sure that everybody gets to participate by having regulated capital markets and financial markets where even small kind of savings can be used to buy shares in the market. We have fiscal policy. The government can decide in certain times that it needs to increase its spending. It can direct where that spending should go. For example, I come from Tamil Nadu, a state that is always focused on kind of social equality and social justice. We just finished our budget presentation 2 weeks ago. I kicked off the debate for my party and I congratulated the government. I said, I'm happy to see that you have allocated a record amount of 4,000 something crores for the development of Adi Dravida youth hostels, tuitions, colleges, schools, for what is 18% of the population, and then another 1,000 crores for the backward classes and the most backward classes, which is about 50% of the population. Note the ratio here. You find the most oppressed, you give them the greatest uplift. You find the less oppressed, you give them less uplift. What we are trying to do is create a level playing field. If we don't do these things, we are going to find that the notion of sustainability leads to conflict. It leads to conflict person to person, rich person to poor person. It leads to conflict state to state. We are starting to see that now. I just give you a stark contrast. I come from Tamil Nadu. In Tamil Nadu, the average age today is 31. The total fertility rate, the birth rate is 1.6. The per capita income is over 2 lakh rupees. The average education is +2 graduate, high school graduate. And 48% of college age kids enroll in a college. In Bihar, that number is average age 19, average education elementary school dropout, average income per capita income about 45,000 rupees, and less than 20% of college age children enroll in college. This is despite the fact that for the last 70 years, through the finance commissions, the central government has been taking more and more taxes away from the richer states like Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Andhra, and sending them to the poorer states like Bihar, UP, etc. We have no problem. We are good citizens. In a federal society, those that are well off should support those that are not well off. But in China, when the coastal provinces send money to the rural, the gap narrows. In America, when New York and California pay more taxes and Missouri and Kansas and North Dakota and Montana benefit from them, the gap narrows in any measure, in per capita income, in education, in quality of life, in anything. In Europe, when Germany and France and the Scandinavian countries that are part of the Union give money and the Portugal, Spain, Italy get the benefit, the gap narrows. In India, we keep sending the money and the gap keeps widening. And here is the problem, the root problem of inequality. You cannot break inequality. You cannot create sustainability by band-aid solutions. You cannot create them by doing money transfers today. You cannot solve them by having one-off programs. You cannot solve them through flooding the world markets with liquidity as you did after the global financial crisis. You cannot say that the response to trade problems is that we will put up barriers. The only way that you can break inequality and therefore increase sustainability is to start at the roots, at the grassroots. You start with ensuring that every baby has a chance to stay alive. You focus on things like infant mortality rate. You start with providing nutrition and education to all. In Tamil Nadu, under the Justice Party, in 1921, they passed a resolution, a law, that women have the right to vote. Before women had the right to vote in London, we made sure that we were equal society. They passed a law that elementary education is compulsory for boys and girls. We made sure that every member of society was given basic education. For 40, 50 years, we have kept on expanding the free noon meal program, where we give them food and eggs and everything. So we make sure that they are growing up with proper health and proper kind of nutrition. If you do not start at the bottom, if you do not start with the children and with the women, if you do not pass laws like we have in Tamil Nadu, that women have equal rights to property, equal rights to education, if you do not reserve seats for them in political positions, you cannot break out of this inequality problem. It is not a simple issue, but it is a clear issue. It requires decades of constant vigil and constant policies that must start from the bottom of the problem, and you must work at it for decades before you can get a greater feeling of inequality kind of set aside and work towards a harmonious society. Now it's ironic. When I look at the state level, I tell you the difference. And I say the Gini coefficient, which measures the spread of wealth in Tamil Nadu, is a lot lower than it is in Gujarat or Maharashtra or any other part of India. Lower than in Karnataka. If I look at countries Places like Singapore, places like Australia, New Zealand, Scandinavia, that have focused on these kinds of principles from the beginning, have much better development and much less unequal societies. In fact, were you to do a statistical correlation, you will find that those parts of the world that have less inequality have the highest per capita income and have the highest quality of life. So to me, before we start kind of us versus them, who's polluting, how much carbon dioxide, how much plastic is being used, of course I'm going to talk my own book. Every industrialized nation already polluted the world fully. Now they have the money to go to solar power, and they look at India and China and say, why are you still using coal? I still haven't rural electrification is not done. In Tamil Nadu is done, in South India is done, in North India is not yet done. So, is it more important that the poorest of the poor have lights and a fan, or should we start cutting carbon emissions for the rest of the world's sake? These are all difficult conundrums. And they cannot be fixed post hoc, they cannot be fixed ad hoc, and they cannot be fixed with band-aid solutions. So, with that, let me just thank you again for this opportunity, and I hope I've given you enough thoughts to either think about or what can I say, refute. And I wind up with a pleasure. Thank you.